Hi, I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here with my May reading wrap-up. So I'm actually here today to wrap up the entire month of May. Usually I do a mid-month wrap-up and then an end-of-the-month wrap-up for my reading each month. This month I skipped out on the mid-month wrap-up, so I did some other videos instead in May, and so I never got that one filmed. And once I had time to film that one, it was like too late and it was already going to be at the end of the month soon, so I just decided to wait and talk about all the books that I read in May in this video. So it's going to be a long one, but I'm going to quickly run through them because I did read 35 books for the month of May, so I'm just going to kind of quickly get into them. So the last 2 months in particular, I've actually slowed down my reading for what I usually read in a month. So with that said, there's been more quality books over the quantity of books, which I am not mad about. So anyways, let's get into the 35 books that I've read this month. Like I said, I'm going to quickly run down them and get into them. Some of them I won't talk about too long if I don't have much to say or if I didn't like love or hate them. They're kind of just like mid books to me. Probably not much to say there. But as always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of the books that I do read, I review every book that I read. I have them in my Goodreads, which is always linked in the description of all of my videos. So with that all out of the way, let's get into the 35 books I read this month. All right, first up I had an audio ALC of Their Last Resort by R.S. Gray. So this one, it came out in May and I ended up giving this one 3 stars. This one was just like a fun, cute, short, quick summertime romance between 2 co-workers. They actually work on a kind of like island resort together. They work in Turks and Caicos at a vacation resort and they're kind of like at odds with one another, or so the heroine thinks. So it's one of those kind of setup. And so they actually have kissed in the past and have kind of gone their separate ways and have this like little animosity towards one another. It's kind of immature. I feel like the heroine in particular, her like entire character was very frustrating and immature, so I wasn't a super fan of that. I feel like these 2 characters deserve each other, so there is that. Like I said, 3 stars. It was a quick read. If I didn't have the audio like ALC, I probably wouldn't have gotten to it, so just know that. Next up, I had an arc of The Dawn of the Cursed Queen by Amber V. Nicole. So this is the 3rd book in her Gods and Monsters series, which is a fantasy romance series that I absolutely love so much. I've given every book in the series a 5 stars, so this was no different as well. I had such a good time with this one. This one is out now. It came out just at the end of May, so definitely pick it up if you haven't yet. Basically, I can't say too much because the entire series follows the same couple, the same characters, so it's like this overarching kind of plot and whole thing happening. So I can't say too much. Basically though, the start of the series is like an enemies to lovers, true enemies to lovers setup in fantasy romance. There are gods and celestials and monsters and villainous characters, morally gray characters, a villainous heroine. It is so good. I'm obsessed. So yeah, this is a continuation of the series. Then I jumped into The Show by Lulu Moore. This one is the 3rd book in her Tuesday Club series and the audiobook recently came out. There are 3 books in the series. They all have audios now. All the audios are on my Hoopla, so definitely check that if you have Hoopla. And this one I ended up giving 4 stars to. I had a good time with the series, not like an all-time favorite, but like an enjoyable one, and this one I really enjoyed as well. This is a billionaire hero, best friend's brother romance where the hero has pined for the heroine for literally decades, and so he just never thought he was good enough for her. I didn't think he stood a chance, didn't want to mess up his sister's relationship with her, so he kind of just like ignored her and never even bothered. And so the heroine has always thought that he hated her. Of course, that's not the case. Now they end up working together. His grandfather actually purchases the New York Lions, which is actually a spin-off series that the author has with her baseball romances. And so it was really fun seeing the hero become the owner of that team, how that all came to be. It has a really good setup for The Third Baseman, which is my favorite book by this author. So there is the setup of that book in this one because, like I said, the hero, his grandfather ends up purchasing that baseball team and is like, hey, it's failing. I want you to fix it up and make them successful. And so the hero ends up having to work with the heroine. So now they're around one another. I love a hero who has pined. This one, like I said, he's pined for like 25 years, which is a little wild, but you know, it is what it is. So yeah, fun audio, 4 stars. This whole series follows like 3 guy friends, and so they're like just a fun little like bromance situation. So yeah, really fun one. Like I said, the audios are on Hoopla, so definitely check that. All right, so next there was a new Audible original from Cara Bastone, which I absolutely love this author. I've read every single thing she has written, all the Audible originals she's done, all the things. And this one was actually a time travel romance, so I decided to jump into it. This one though, I ended up giving it 3/3.5 stars. This one is very quirky and fun. It has, like I said, this twist to time travel, which was interesting. There's a full cast narration. I just love the Audible originals that this author does because like it feels like a graphic audio. Like you hear all the noises, you hear all the sound effects, like it's a fun time. This one, if you're familiar with the author's other Audible originals, it kind of feels like that, kind of those like quirky, fun conversations, very conversationally. So it almost feels like you're listening to a podcast of these characters talking without having like been in a room with one another. So it has that element to it as well. Not my favorite from this author, but like a quick fun time with a fun twist on time travel. So yeah, 3/3.5 stars. Next, I had an audio ALC of Fragile Sanctuary by Catherine Cowles. This is the first book in her new Small Town series, which is Sparrow Falls, and I love this book so much. Gave it 5 stars. A new favorite from Catherine for me, and I absolutely cannot wait for the rest of the series. This book is like full of tropes, and it's full of all the tropes that I love. So it has forced proximity, brother's best friend, grumpy sunshine, touch her and die, romantic suspense, a serial unaliver that is kind of in the background of the story. It has them fixing up a house. It has a found family, hilarious side characters, a really funny grandmother that's in there. It has a broken, broody hero. Just so good. I loved this one and ate it up. When I love the found family that we have in this one as well, which I feel like is going to be explored throughout the series as well, as far as like this adopted and foster siblings and all of these things. I cannot wait and just love this family and all of these characters so much already. So this one, in the prologue, we learned about the heroine's past, which of course in true Catherine style, it rips out your heartstrings and pulls you in emotionally to the book immediately. So we have that kind of set up. And so it cuts to years later, and the heroine is now ready to fix up her family's home where a kind of catastrophe happened in the past. Like I said, you learn about it in the prologue. And so she's back to kind of take control and finally fix up this old like Victorian house. And so she's on the property and she ends up running into the hero, who actually is her brother's best friend and works for him. He does like construction for him. He's an ex-serial profiler as well for the FBI. So they run into one another and he assumes that she's just like trespassing. And so they get into this little like heated bantery animosity moment. So it has this kind of like hate to love set up in the beginning, which was so much fun. The banter like right from the start. And so it kind of goes from there where she is kind of around him because he's fixing up the house and they're working together. Some things start happening that kind of tie into her past. He kind of tells her about some things from his past as well. And it kind of goes from there. I don't want to give away too much, but it is just so good. Pulls you in immediately. I loved how both of these have lost in the past. They have healing and trauma to get over, and they kind of do that together. And it's just so good. Like I said, I can't wait for the rest of the series. 5 stars, highly recommend. All right, next I jumped into Puck Block by S.J. Silvis. This is the 3rd book in her Bexley U series, which is a hockey romance series. And so this one I actually ended up giving 3 stars to. I think it's my least favorite in the series so far, which is sad because I loved Weekside. It's my favorite in the series, the first one. So I still wanted to give it a go, but like this one just didn't hit the mark for me. So this one is Brother's Best Friend, where they've actually all grown up together, the heroine and her brother and the hero. And then it has a heroine with type 1 diabetes. It has, like I said, the college hockey setup. It also has like a teach me lessons and moments. So it has all of that going. Basically in here, the heroine has recently found out that she has type 1 diabetes. And so a lot of the story, which was one of my issues with the book, is focused on that and her like not wanting to come to terms with that. She's dealing with like either taking her medication. Sometimes she doesn't do her like medications and things she's supposed to do. But the hero and her brother have always like looked after her and protected her and taken care of her. So they're very involved in her healthcare. They're also involved in her love life and kind of want to keep everybody away from her. So the heroine's tired of that and she's like, hey, I want to have a good time. So I need you to like step aside and let me do that. So she kind of makes this deal with the hero and he's like, okay, well, I'll like help you out, give you lessons, kind of do that type of setup. And so of course it kind of goes from there. So I really enjoy like a brother's best friend setup, and the romance part I was here for, but it was the rest of the book which really focuses on the heroine's like diagnosis, like I said, with her type 1 diabetes and the ups and downs, mostly the downs, and all of her struggles with kind of that really takes over the story. Her parents and her brother are super involved, which I kind of didn't get because like she's in her early 20s. So like, why are they even having a say? Why are they calling her doctors for her? I don't know. It was a lot. And I was just like, girl, like take control of your life. But anyway, so yeah, 3 stars for this one. Not a favorite, but it is what it is. All right, next I had an audio ALC of A Meant for Her by Natasha Madison. So this is her newer hockey romance series. This is book 2, and they are standalone. So there is that. I actually was a little worried to go into this one because I really didn't enjoy book 1, but this one I really enjoyed it and it was such a breath of fresh air. So this one I ended up giving 4 stars to. So like I said, this one is a hockey romance, and here we have a single mom heroine. She's a widow as well. And basically the hero was best friends and teammates with her late husband. And so this one is slow burn and it is just so angsty and so good. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, the hero was a teammate and friend to her late husband. And so he's kind of been involved in her daughter's lives and kind of wants to be there for them through like everything they're going through. So that kind of evolves from there. There's a lot of emotional elements. I just really liked how the hero like stepped in, wanted to be there for her daughters and for her as well. And the romance was just so good as well. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. All right, next up I did a reread of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton by Julia Quinn to kind of gear up for the Bridgerton season 3 on Netflix. I have a whole reading vlog set to this. We did this book as like a bonus book for Historical Hellions, our book club as well. So yeah, I have a whole vlog for it. I will link it in the description of the video if you want to go check it out. I'm actually in, I guess, the minority for this book. I really enjoyed this one. I give it 4 stars. I love like a friends to lovers setup. I love the growth of the characters throughout this book. So yeah, I enjoyed this one. Enjoyed my reread, 4 stars. All right, and then I had an arc of Unstitched by Elodie Hart. So this one actually gave like 3/3.5 stars. This is probably my least favorite in the series. So basically this is a London kind of sex club setup where this is, I think, book 5 now in the series. And so we're following all these kind of like characters and friends and kind of this whole like friend group. So basically in here, this one is actually MMF with 2 heroes and a heroine that all get together. So one of the heroes is like the brother of the heroine, I think, of book 1. And the heroine is the sister of the heroine of a previous book as well. And so yeah, their siblings are kind of involved, like co-owners of this club. And so now they're kind of like working at the club, get introduced to this other guy at the club, and it kind of goes from there. This was just like very smutty and steamy, and I don't know, this kind of series has lost its luster for me a little bit. Like they're still fun, but this one was my least favorite. So there is that. Gave it 3 stars. All right, next up I read Here We Go Again by Alison Cochrane, and I love this one so much. This is one of my favorites of the month. I gave this one 5 stars. This one is a sapphic romance that has a road trip. It has best friends turn enemies to lovers, which I love and eat up. This one is, though, pretty heavy and emotional on some of the content, so just know that going in. There is a death on page, so just know that going in. It kind of deals with the loss of a father figure to both of the heroines. So like I said, if you need content warnings, definitely check it because this one is kind of heavier on the emotional elements. All right, so we see the 2 heroines in this one. They were actually best friends as kids. They had a falling out, kind of went their separate ways. They were away from one another for years, and then they have been in the same town working at the same school for quite some time now, but they kind of like just ignore one another. So basically there was this teacher that they had growing up who they loved and adored, and he's basically like a father figure kind of to both of them. And so basically he was diagnosed with cancer, he's passing away, and so he wants to go on this one last road trip, and he wants both of them to come with him, where they travel, I think, from Washington or Oregon and drive all the way across country to Maine, where he owns this like cabin. And so they kind of go along the way with him on this trip. There's a lot of healing and all these things through the story. It's just such a beautiful story. It's super emotional. I really loved the characters, like the heroines together, as well as their relationship with their like father figure in the story as well. Just so good. It feels very real. Like I said, the content warnings, definitely check those if you need it, because there's a lot of stuff that happens on page, and it is just so good. All the feels. Loved this one, especially the audiobook. 5 stars. Just really loved this one. All right, and then next I jumped into Whiskey Beach by Nora Roberts, and this one I ended up giving 2 stars, maybe 2.5 stars. I had such a hard time with this one. I had heard like that a lot of people, this was their favorite from Nora Roberts, or one of their favorites, I should say. So I kind of had high hopes for this one and was hoping to enjoy it more than I did, but I just like had a hard time with this one. The audiobook narrator I couldn't stand, so that really didn't help the story, and the story was just so slow and so boring. I couldn't get into it. So yeah, I did not enjoy this one. Like 2/2.5 stars. Then I jumped into the new thriller from Melissa Cole, which is One of Us Knows. I had high hopes for this one because I've read, I think, like all of Melissa Cole's backlist, possibly. Maybe there's a few indie ones that I haven't read, but like all of her romances, all of her other thrillers I've read and have enjoyed. This one, though, just didn't hit for me. I gave it 2/2.5 stars. So basically in this one, we follow a character with dissociative identity disorder, which is somebody with multiple personalities, basically. And so we have a lot of kind of those inner thoughts, inner conversations happening of kind of all these characters trying to figure out who they are, where they are, what's happening when they kind of come to the present, I guess you could say, or take over. And so we have a lot of that kind of inner conversations happening, which was just so boring. I went into this one expecting like a thriller and this murder to happen, and that doesn't happen until like 75% into the story. So like I said, once that hit in the last 25% of the book, it was good, but the getting there, so boring. Don't recommend. All right, and then next up I had an audio ALC of Savor It by Tara DeWitt. And so this one, I think I'm just in the minority for this author. Like her books just don't work for me, and I just need to know that and be okay with that. So this one I ended up giving it 3 stars to, which is actually what I've given. I think I've read 3 books now from this author, which the first time I gave it 3 stars for Funny Feelings. The next book, I think it was The Co-op, also gave that one like 3 stars. And so I had planned to probably not pick up any of her books in the future, but then I got this one as an ARC. I also got an audio ALC of it. So I was like, okay, one last chance. Let me give it a go. So I did, but it was 3 stars for me as well. So I think this author and I just, we're just not compatible, so that's okay. This one, though, I know a lot of people love and enjoy it. So basically it is a small town. We have opposites attract with a city boy and a country girl. We have a forced proximity where they're neighbors. It's a slow burn, and we have like a friends with benefits kind of setup. So this one, the heroine lives in a small town. She's lived there all her life, and she absolutely loves it. She's just thriving, but she recently got broken up with, and her ex ends up getting like engaged super quickly. And so she's kind of of just like not feeling the vibes of that, of like having to hear from that from everybody in town. And so at the same time, the hero actually ends up moving to town, or coming to town, I should say. He's basically like this hotshot chef from New York who he recently is just like not feeling the love for cooking anymore. He lost his Michelin star. He recently had to take in his niece. And so he's kind of just like needing a break, or so his boss thinks. And so sends him off to kind of like take a little sabbatical from work. And so he goes to Oregon, and while he's there, he's supposed to also like be finding maybe a new up and coming location for a possible restaurant. And so that is when he meets the heroine, and their story kind of goes from there. It's just very low angst and cute, which isn't always my favorite thing. I will say though, this one totally played out like a TV show or a movie in my mind. Like I could see this small town, all these like kind of side characters shenanigans happenings, hearing about all the town gossip, could totally see it as a TV show. So yeah, all of the kind of like small town shenanigans I enjoyed. The romance though just wasn't it for me. I didn't feel it. And that is kind of like, you know, you need to feel the romance to enjoy a romance book for the most part. So yeah, didn't really love it. Also, I just don't think this author's like humor hits for me. So there is that as well. So yeah, not a favorite for me, but like I said, I know a lot of people who love it. So yeah, 3 stars from me, and we are just gonna move on. Next up is The Dixon Rule by Elle Kennedy. This is the second book in her Dixon Rules series. I had an arc of this one, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. I just love Elle Kennedy's books. Like being back in her sports romance world is just so much fun. I love the sports action, the characters we get in here, like all the side characters, the friendships, the romance, the steam in this one. So good. Basically in here we have like a forced proximity and kind of a fake dating situation as well, where the 2 characters, they actually live in the same apartment building, and the hero plays hockey for their college, and the heroine is the captain of the cheer team. And so they kind of like bump heads and just have this like kind of animosity at first. Tons of banter. They end up in this like kind of frenemies with benefits situation. And like I said, there's fake dating as well. This one I just really had a good time with. This book is more emotional and has some heavier topics in it. So just know that going in, and maybe check content warnings. There is some abuse that happens on page. So know that going in. And like I said, there's other content warnings as well. So definitely check that if you need it. I know I have them in my Goodreads. So yeah, this one is so good. Really enjoying the series. This one was 4 stars for me. All right, next I had an arc of Homestead by Claire Kent. This one is out now though. This is part of her Kindled post-apocalyptic romance series, which I absolutely love. I have a whole like series recommendation for this on my channel, which I'll link in the description of the video. This is book 7. I gave it 4.5 stars. So like I said, this whole series is post-apocalyptic romances, which I absolutely love. The like dark and gritty and kind of like survival stories, and just like the realness of everything is just so good. And here we have kind of a marriage of convenience, or more of like a partnership of convenience, because there's not really like marriages anymore in this like post-apocalyptic world. But anyways, basically in here, the heroine was living with her grandfather, who was like a prepper before the impact happened that came and like destroyed Earth, totally messed it up, and like caused this like post-apocalyptic setting to happen. And so she's kind of come out of that and kind of needs a new place to stay because her grandfather passes away. And so the hero ends up rescuing her at the right time and takes her back to his like farming community of people he's like living with and some of his family. And so she's living there for a while, and basically tells her like, hey, I have like this proposition for you. Do you want to come live at my cabin with me? I have my own place, but you'll like help with the daily chores and like the workload and all of that, but also like be my partner in all ways, because he's lonely and he's really into her. And so it kind of goes from there. So good. These characters kind of like struggle and are frustrating at times because they both obviously have feelings for one another, but neither of them is seeing that, but we know that. And so it's like, come on, you guys, like, you like each other, like get it together. So there is that, but like it's frustrated in a good way. Really enjoyed this one. Just love like the caretaking and them like being there for one another. I just love this series. So good. 4.5 stars for me. All right, next up I read Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. So this one had been on my TBR since it came out. I have enjoyed this author in the past. I read The Martian years ago when that came out, and like before it became a movie, and I just really enjoy that one. So I have been wanting to check out this newer release for, like I said, a couple years, like since it was released. Finally got to it. I gave it 4 stars. So this book drops you right into the action right from the start of the story when we're introduced to the main character, and as he kind of figures out who he is, where he is, what he's doing as well. So we kind of see it all playing out. This one, it is just so fast paced, like something happening all the time. The way the author writes like main characters are just like very witty and snappy and like very chatty talky. So that's always a lot of fun, and I could see it like playing out as a movie in my head, which is good because this is being made into a movie as well. So I can't wait to watch it when it comes out. It's just very like fast paced, sciencey space things if you enjoy that, which I do. So yeah, 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. Very like isolated, but so fast-paced, an unlikely friendship. Really enjoyed this one. All right, and then I had an arc of Forbidden Game by Madison Fox. So this is the second book in her System series, which is a kind of like video gamer series. So this one I gave 4 stars to. I really loved Good Game by her last year, which was her debut. That one is still my favorite in the series, and this one though was a fun addition as well. So this series, we're basically following these, they were masked video game streamers, and now they've kind of taken their masks off and the public knows who they are, which we see all the events of that happening in book 1. And so in this one, we already knew the setup of the characters that was going to follow in this one. So it is a kind of billionaire hero slash one of the video game players, and he's English. And then we have the heroine, who is their publicist for these video game streamers. And so there's a lot of forced proximity. They live in the same apartment building. She goes a lot with them on his travels and kind of keeps his schedule up to date and all the things like that, very much involved in his daily life. So it's very quick and sweet and fun. And I just wanted like a little bit more angst or maybe something else to it. The hero in here, he basically is going to be cut off from the inheritance of his like really wealthy family, but he's also wealthy from the video game stuff. So it's like not a real loss kind of career-wise for him, but he is kind of struggling with that throughout the story. So yeah, it was fun and sweet. I just enjoyed book one more, but this is still solid. Such a good time. Really enjoy the series. 4 stars. They are on Kindle Unlimited. All right, then next I was just in like a historical romance mood. So I picked up a Teresa Medeiros because I really enjoy this author's books. So I read A Kiss to Remember, which had been on my TBR for quite a few years since I first heard about it. So I finally got to this one, and this one I didn't really love. It's probably like my least favorite I've actually read from this author. So I gave this one 3 stars. Like I said, I have really enjoyed Teresa Medeiros books in the past, and I do want to read so many more of her historicals. So while this one was kind of like a little lackluster to me, like it didn't deter me from reading her books in the future. So yeah, this one basically is a historical romance. It has the amnesia trope, and so I knew all of that going in and was just ready for like a good time. So basically in here we see the hero. He's actually taken away, actually sold by his parents to his uncle because his uncle didn't have an heir and he wants one. And like his parents are literally given money for selling him to his uncle. And so the uncle is super abusive and not a nice guy. And so we see the hero kind of go from this like fun and cute kid to being like a very cold and kind of like a grumpy guy as an adult. And he's now like the Duke. And so we kind of, you know, cut to years later. So he finds out that his mother actually passed away recently and he's never gone back to his family's home because of all the like not so great memories from that. And so he decides, you know what, I'm gonna go there because he finds out that his mom had taken in this woman and her siblings, which is the heroine. And so he's like, you know what, she like had the nerve to sell me, but then she's gonna like adopt and be the guardian for these people. Like, let me go find out what's going on over there. So that happens on his way. So he gets thrown from his horse, hits his head, passes out. The heroine is, like I said, she's the one who's living there and she stumbles across him. She's always dreamed of like romance and finding a Prince Charming. And so when she sees the hero, she decides to kiss him. And so that wakes him up. And when he's like, oh my God, who am I? And like, who are you? She's like, oh yeah, you're mine. And so it kind of goes from there with this kind of like fake relationship situation where she tells them they're engaged. So yeah, it goes from there. Like I said, at the start of this one, I was really enjoying, but then it kind of just slowed down, got a little boring for me, and it was just felt very lackluster. It's a lot more rom-com-y than some of the other books I've read from this author, which I like kind of her more emotional, angsty ones. So there is that. Like I said, it's not gonna stop me from reading other books from this author in the future. This one just wasn't a hit for me. So yeah, 3 stars for this one. All right, next up, I jumped into Queen Charlotte by Julia Quinn and Shonda Rhimes. I had watched the Netflix adaptation of Queen Charlotte last year or whenever it came out. Loved it so much. So emotional, so good. It's still my favorite thing that Shonda Rhimes and Julia Quinn have adapted. And so I just loved that story so much. And so I finally decided to get to the book, and I'm so glad I did because I gave it 5 stars. Loved it so much. I will say the book definitely reads as a manuscript for the season that they have of Queen Charlotte. So if you watch them kind of back to back and also read it, it's going to be like the same story over again. If that's your vibe, totally do it. But for me, I'm glad I took the break in between watching and then reading, and I just love this one. If you watch the show series and you know it's following Queen Charlotte and her relationship and romance with King George throughout the years. We also get some Lady Danbury backstory as well. And then the show, you get moments with Violet Bridgerton, which in the book version, you don't get any of that at all, which I actually kind of preferred. I love Violet Bridgerton, but I kind of like her just in the Bridgerton world. And I'm so glad in the book, we just get the focus on Queen Charlotte, King George, Charlotte's relationship with Lady Danbury, her relationship with Brimsley, who is kind of like her manservant who follows her around all the time. I just really loved it and ate it up. The friendships are just so strong. The romance, so emotional. This is like emotional damage. This book and story, it's just so good. Loved it so much. The audiobook is fantastic. Highly recommend if you can't tell, 5 stars. All right, next I jumped into Learn Your Lesson by Candy Steiner. So this is the 3rd book in her Kings of the Ice series, which is a hockey romance series. So I've read all the books in the series. The first book is still my favorite, but this one I enjoyed more than I liked book 2. So there is that. This one is a single dad and nanny romance, and we have a single dad hero who we've been kind of seeing throughout the series. This was also Candy Steiner's first like single parent romance, I believe, or at least single dad hero for sure. And so it was a lot of fun. This is so steamy, so fun. I really enjoyed this one, gave it 4 stars. In this one, we see that the hero needs a new nanny for his daughter. And so the heroine is actually her kindergarten teacher, and his daughter just obviously already connects with her. And so one time she brings her to one of his hockey games and he's like, hey, could you actually like help out and become my nanny as well, because I need somebody to like watch over my daughter, and you're so good with her. So it goes from there. This has a Grumpy Sunshine vibes as well, because the hero is just like this very grumpy hockey player. I loved his relationship with his daughter, and then the heroine's relationship with his daughter as well. It was just so cute. Love the teammates, love the found family kind of friendships in the story. So yeah, really enjoyed this one, 4 stars. Next, I read his Forbidden Touch by Shelley Thacker. So this was the Historical Hellions book club pick for this month, which is a historical romance book club that I co-host with Jess from Peace Love Books and Samantha from Books with Samantha. So this was our May pick, and this one I ended up giving 3, maybe 3.5 stars. I expected to love this one, but it kind of lost its luster in the middle for me and kind of was just a little slow. So there is that. Basically, this is a medieval romance, and it is a forbidden romance where the heroine is a princess and she's betrothed to kind of the enemy's prince or king or whatever, where the hero is then a disgraced knight who her father, the king, ends up telling the hero, like making a bargain with him, if you can deliver my daughter safely to her betrothed, then I will give you back all of your lands, your title, your name, all of those things. And so it is actually the romance between the hero, who is the exiled knight, and the heroine, the princess, on her way to her betrothal to somebody else. So kind of like has forbidden elements for sure. And yeah, I just expected a little bit more from this one. The middle kind of slowed down and was lackluster to me. So there is that. This was my first time reading from Shelley Thacker. I'd probably pick up more of her books in the future though, because like I said, the writing in here was really good and really easy to get pulled into. So there is that. I just wanted like a little more angst for me in this one. So yeah, 3 stars, 3.5 stars. All right, next I had an audio ALC of Fear and Fortitude by Sherry Champagne. And so this is a newer historical romance. This is a indie historical romance author. So I was really excited to try that out because I'm always in the mood or wanting to find like new historical romance authors to fall in love with. And so this one I ended up giving 4 stars too. I will say the first half of the story was really great to me. The second half kind of did lag. I think if I wasn't listening to the audio, I might have had a harder time with this one. But since it was an audiobook, it's narrated by Shane East and Zara Hampton Brown, it was just really easy to get lost in their story and get pulled in. So there is that. This is a historical romance, like I mentioned. It has kind of secret identities for both the hero and the heroine set up. And so I did enjoy that aspect to it. So in here, we see that the heroine is the sister of a duke, and she ends up fleeing because her family or her brother is going to sell her off into this marriage to like some old guy that she doesn't want to get married to. She wants to be able to control her own life, and so she ends up taking off, dressing as like a maid or a housekeeper, and running away. She gets into like this carriage accident, or kind of like poses it as a carriage accident, and has like a gunshot go off. And so the hero, he's out like shooting on his land or hunting or something like that. Kind of goes from there, and the heroine tells the hero that she is a governess and that she was on her way to a job. And so he's like, well, this is perfect because I have my niece here that needs a governess as well, so you can start working for me, because he's also not believing her story. So he wants to like figure it out and look into it while she's there. So it goes from there. Like I said, they both have emotional kind of trauma and scars in their past, and they're both hiding something from one another. And so it kind of goes from there. So yeah, it was a fun one to try out from a new author. Next up is Spookily Yours by Jennifer Chipman. I saw so many friends reading this one recently, so I decided to give it a go. This one, I kind of had higher hopes for it, and it was kind of a bit of a letdown. I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. It was cute. It just wasn't exactly what I wanted. So there is that. This one I feel like would be a super fun like Halloween, spooky season, fall read for sure, because it gave off all of those vibes, very much like Hocus Pocus and Sabrina the Teenage Witch, like the old show in the 90s that I used to love, and like Halloween Town, kind of all of those like movie, TV show vibes. This book as well, I thought it was a novella, which I feel like it would have benefited from it being a novella. It's like around, I think like 240, 250 pages, and I feel like it could have been a lot shorter, and I probably would have enjoyed it more. So, which, let me tell you what it's about. So basically in here, the heroine is a witch, and the hero is stuck in this like demon form as a cat, and so they meet. So it kind of goes from there with them trying to lift this curse off of the hero, and they have to work together, and it goes from there. This one is very insta-love, kind of like that Fated Mates quality. It has a very like immature characters though. Like I felt like the hero and the heroine are supposed to be older than they act. So I don't know, that just kind of didn't jive well for me, especially with how much like spice and smut is in here. Just felt off to how they're acting, but maybe that's a me thing, I don't know. This one is also just like very syrupy sweet, which is not my favorite thing. Like I said, I think at a fall kind of cozy season read, it would be perfect. And if the length was shorter, I would have enjoyed it more. So it is what it is, 3 stars for me. All right, and then next I jumped into Truly Madly Deeply by Alexandria Bellflower, which this is the newest release from this author, and I love this one so much. Gave it 5 stars, one of my favorites of the month. This one is so good. We have a cinnamon roll kind of nerdy hero. We have a grumpy heroine. Both the characters in here are bisexual as well, so we have that kind of bisexual rep happening. This one is so fun. Like the heroine in here is a historical romance author, and basically everybody assumes, like, since she's a historical romance author, that she is like an expert on romance, on love, all of these things. Her parents are happily married. She has a great fiance. And so she's actually invited to do this podcast where she's going to be paired up with somebody to talk about like happily ever afters and kind of dating advice or romance advice. And so right before she's supposed to go on to the podcast, she finds out that her fiance is cheating on her. She finds out that her parents are splitting up after like 30 plus years together. And so her entire world is definitely rocked and her views on like romance and love change. So she comes to the podcast with kind of all of that going on in the background. And then she's paired up with the hero, who his sister actually runs the podcast, and the hero is a divorce lawyer. So it's kind of posing this like romance author versus a divorce lawyer giving like romance and dating advice. And so they kind of banter and go back and forth, and he kind of gets under her skin, not in a good way. So she leaves the podcast not having a good time with it. And then the hero feels so bad. And so he tries to email her and write to her and tell her like how sorry he is and like they need a do-over because he feels bad. And so she eventually like gives in, or he actually, I think, tracks her down where her friend works, shows up there and is like, okay, like let's do a do-over because I feel so terrible. Like I said, he's a very cinnamon roll hero, which I loved. And so she decides to give him a second chance, and they kind of like start talking. They realize they have a lot of things in common. She kind of tells him what she was going through that day on the podcast, when then he kind of like hurt her feelings with some things that he said. And so it goes from there. It's just so good. Like I said, I was obsessed with this one. I'm a little mad I didn't get to it sooner because it came out, I think, in April of this year. And I was waiting, well, I was mostly waiting for the audiobook to come in from my library, but like I wish I would have got to it sooner because it's so good. These two just worked like so perfectly together. I love how we have a prickly heroine who the hero kind of breaks through her thorns to get to her, and the hero as well. He has like some emotional walls up that she has to break through. So good. Love their pairing. Just so good. Highly recommend if you haven't checked it out. I love everything from this author actually that I've read, but this one's definitely a new favorite from her. All right, next I jumped into A Photo Finish by Elsie Silver. This is another one of my favorites of the month. So this is the, I think, second book in her Gold Rush Ranch series, which is her first romance series that came before like Chestnut Springs with like Flawless and Heartless that she's more popular for. But this first series is getting audiobooks finally, and so I'm slowly kind of going to them as the audios come out, which I am so enjoying. I gave this one 5 stars if I didn't say. Yeah, so good. This one is Small Town, Forced Proximity, Second Chance, I Hate Everybody But You, pining broody hero, like Western vibes. It is everything and more. Like, this is my favorite book of May for sure. I loved it so much, and some things are unveiled at the end of the story, which is a bit of a spoiler, so I can't say it, but it's so good. When it hits right. Loved it so much. I'm so glad I'm taking my time and kind of going through this series, or like savoring this series as the audios come out, because it is so good. Like, I've loved this series maybe more than Chestnut Springs, possibly. We'll see as the books continue, but I'm just like having a good time with this one. I love it so much, which I didn't even tell you what this is about. So anyways, basically in here, the heroine is the new horse jockey for this like ranch, and so the hero ends up coming there because his family, I think, works there, possibly. Yeah, he runs it or something like that. And so he comes there and they meet in person, which they actually knew one another in the past, but they didn't realize it was each other because they had this like online secret kind of like conversation relationship, I guess, for like a whole year, where basically they met on this site where she put up nude photos, and he kind of had this relationship with her through the photos, and they talked like every day. And then one time they were doing like a video chat, and he kind of ghosted her after that for some things. And so that's where the second chance part comes into it. I'm probably not explaining this very well, but it's so good, so angsty and so piney. I loved it. So the hero shows up at the ranch, and now they are around one another, and the heroine also gets injured at work. And so basically she needs an apartment or a place to stay where she's just on like one level, where the bedroom and bathroom and kind of kitchen and everything's on one level for her, unlike the apartment that she lives in. And so the only place on the ranch is with the hero. And so forced proximity, him taking care of her, it is, it's just everything. Like, I kind of want to re-listen to it because the audiobook is fantastic. Highly recommend. 5 stars. So good. Then I jumped into Return to Monte Carlo by Kate C. Wells, and this one I gave 4 stars to. This one I had a good time with as well. The audiobook recently came out. This one definitely gave me like old school romance vibes, if that makes sense, where he kind of like overly dramatic. We have kind of obsessive, possessive heroes. We have kind of other woman drama, kind of just like all of those dramatics that old school romances have was definitely in this book, which was just kind of enjoyable. So yeah, this one is a marriage in trouble, kind of second chance. The heroine is on the run from her husband. She's also pregnant, has like a surprise pregnancy, surprise baby situation, I guess, where it's all like in the synopsis as well, so it's not like a spoiler. But yeah, it is just so good. Oh, it's also set in the 80s, which was just like super fun. It has age gap. So basically in here, the heroine was from this like super small town, I think like in Oklahoma or something, and the hero was from this like very like old money, wealthy like European family. And so he came to the US, saw her, they hit it off immediately, and he basically like swept her away and married her. And now it is like their 1-year wedding anniversary, and kind of all that passion is still there, but everything else, like she feels like he's not coming home, like he's missing their anniversary dinner. His family thinks she's a gold digger. They hate her. She just like has no friends over there, and she's just feeling like lost and that he only wants her for her body. So anyways, she ends up taking off, running away, and she goes back to the US. And so she doesn't realize when she leaves though that she's actually pregnant, and so he finds out and comes in and gets her months later and takes her back. So it's them kind of finally talking and her realizing that there is more to their marriage than she thought, and kind of all of that unraveling. It's just so good. Really enjoyed it. Like I said, it gave like old school romance vibes, if that makes sense, and so I enjoyed it for what it was. 4 stars. All right, next I had an arc of Crossroads by Devney Perry, which this one should be coming out maybe the day that this video is going up, I think. This one is so good. I loved it so much and gave it 5 stars. I have read everything from Devney Perry, and more recently I think I mentioned in a couple videos that some of her newer releases haven't been hitting the same for me, and so I kind of felt like, I don't know, that she wasn't going to be for me anymore, but I'm so glad I read this one. It was so good. I loved it. This is the start of a new series. It kind of gave me old Devney Perry vibes, if that makes sense, and I just had a great time with this one and loved it so much. So this one is a small town Montana setting, which I think like all of her books are, so no surprise there. This one is Second Chance, and basically the hero and the heroine, they met when they were children, where his family owned this Montana ranch where her family would come. They were like wealthy and would come from, I think, Texas or something. Every summer they would come to this resort and vacation there, and so she would see the hero kind of throughout her life, all of these different years and just for a summer. And so they were friends when they were younger. As they became teenagers and kind of feelings became involved, other things happened, and so they had a split and went their separate ways. And so now it's years later, and the heroine actually shows up and is now the new owner of his family's ranch, and it kind of goes from there. It has like some hate to love vibes in the beginning as well. Like I said, it's Second Chance. It is just so good. I really enjoyed it. I love the emotional elements in here, the kind of like ranch setting and her having to fix up his family's ranch that has been failing. And it's more like a ranch resort, I guess you should say. Like kind of gave me vibes of like Dirty Dancing, like that whole like upstate New York kind of resort that her family vacations at. That's kind of like that, but in a Montana setting, if that makes sense, where there's like activities and things happening that are more obviously like small town Montana set, like camping adventures and horseback riding and going on like river rafts and kind of all of that stuff happening. So it kind of gave me those vibes, which I am not mad about. And so yeah, I just had a good time with this one. The emotional elements and the angstiness of it all, I was just here for. Second Chance, loved it. Definitely recommend checking it out. All right, next I had an arc of The Puck Decoy by G.N. Wright. So this one is actually out now. It came out, I think, the last day of May, and this is the second book in her Fairfield U hockey series, which I really loved the first book, which was The Puck Secret last year. This book I ended up giving, I think, like 3/3.5 stars. I didn't love this one quite as much as I was hoping to. So if you've read the previous book, which is The Puck Secret, then you know the setup for this book, which is basically an arranged marriage / marriage of convenience. It has best friend's brother, friends to lovers, kind of all of that setup. It also has autism rep, which is own voices from the author, which I thought was a fun add to the book as well. So in the previous book, you see that the hero's father is the worst. The hero in this one and the heroine of book 1 are siblings, and so they have the same father. And so if you've read that book, you know how awful her father is. And basically the hero's father was trying to set up this arranged marriage for his sister. And so he's like, no way, you're not doing that. Like, I will take her place and marry somebody that you want for this arranged marriage. And so his father gives him a list and was like, here's your choices of like suitable brides. And so the hero is shocked when his sister's best friend, the heroine, is on the list. And so he's like, well, I pick her because we're already friends and like she knows the situation. We can make this work. So it kind of goes from there. So I just wasn't super sold with a couple of this one like I was kind of invested with the couple of book 1. This one actually did make me want to go reread book 1, which I might do that on audio because I just love that couple so much, and like seeing glimpses of them in this book was just like more to me than the couple of this book. So there's that. And this one, I don't know, I just wanted more. It's a lot of like him trying to take down his dad, kind of goes from there. Like the hero and the heroine are described as friends to lovers, but then every now and then it'll be like, oh no, like I hate him, he's such an ass. And then it just doesn't make any sense because he didn't do anything like bad or mean to you. So I didn't understand that because it's like, you guys are friends. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know. So that's the whole thing. So yeah, like 3.5 stars. I just wasn't super connected to the couple in this one, but I love this author's writing in general. I really love the teammates in here and the setup for the next book. So ready for that. So it's going to be so good. So yeah, I can't wait. This one wasn't a favorite. So it is what it is. All right. And then next I had an arc of Forgotten Desires by Corinne Michaels. This is the 4th and final book in her Whitlock Farms family series. series, something like that. I always get the name wrong. I think it's Whitlock Family, and I always add the farm part. I don't know. They live on a farm. It's a whole thing. Anyways, this one was so good. I gave it 4/4.5 stars. This one is a small town. It has a billionaire hero. It's a marriage of convenience. It has a single dad. Hero has all the things that I love. So this book's probably my second favorite in the series now. I loved book 1, but this one is probably my next favorite after that. This one's just so good. These are standalones, but you are following kind of the same family. So basically in here, the heroine, all of her brothers have had books in the series, and now it's her turn. And so this is her romance, and it was just so good. Oh, and this one has second chance as well, which I forgot to say. So basically in here, the heroine is at one of her brother's weddings at the beginning of the story, and his new boss shows up and she's sitting next to him, and they told her like the name of the boss, and she's like, oh, okay, can't wait to meet him. And so when he actually sits down next to her, she realizes that she actually knows him, but she knows him under a different name. And so she feels like he lied to her. They basically met when she was in college on spring break, and he was on spring break in like the house next to her. They hit it off and had this like a glorious, spectacular, fell in love like on college spring break moment, but they went separate ways. And so it's kind of a second chance now between them. The hero in here, like I said, he's a billionaire. He's gone through a divorce recently, and he's trying to gain custody of his daughter. And so basically his lawyer's like, you need to have like a super clean, squeaky image where you don't do anything wrong. You're not seen with women, all of these things. And so he's kind of reconnecting with the heroine at the same time. And some pictures are kind of floated around that they're together. And so his lawyer is like, this is not a good look. What are you doing? And he's like, oh my gosh, she's just a friend. His lawyer kind of puts in his ear, like, maybe you should marry somebody, you know, to have like a better image for gaining custody. So he kind of throws this like marriage of convenience to the heroine. And so he basically throws it the heroine's way and is like, hey, I know you're trying to do this like partial liver transplant for her father. And so he's like, you need money for that. I need a wife to help out with my like gaining custody of my daughter. We can help each other out. And so it goes from there. The heroine here is like the sweetest thing ever, who would do anything for anybody. She's trying to rescue and save everyone. And so I loved that about her. I love the hero. He's a billionaire. He's trying to win her back and is so obsessed with her and spoils her. It's just so good. I really enjoyed the whole setup of this one, and it's just so fun. I definitely recommend. So yeah, this one does come out on June 5th. So it should be out or coming out right when this video comes out. So definitely check it out. I gave it 4.5 stars. Really enjoyed it. It's the end of the Whitlock family series, and you get a little bit of a teaser for the next series that's going to start, which I'm very excited for. So yeah, really enjoyed this one. It's a standalone. You could totally read it on its own, but I recommend the whole series. So yeah, 4.5 stars. All right, next I jumped into an arc of Not Safe for Work by Lindsay Lanza. This one actually comes out in June. It comes out on June 18th. Like I said, I had an arc of it, so I decided to jump in. This one I gave, I think, like 3.5 stars. It's just like a solid 3.5 for me, which makes me a little sad because I had loved A Little Magic from this author that I read last year during the holidays. Really loved that one, and so I kind of was expecting to love this one more than I did. This one I will say though, if you loved The Hating Game, you are really going to enjoy this book because it's definitely similar vibes. Co-workers who the heroine thinks the hero hates her, kind of that whole setup. A lot of like other moments that kind of gave me similar vibes and feels to The Hating Game. So there is that, but in here you get the hero's POV, and he is so sweet and so cute. He has a hedgehog. He's obsessed with the heroine. It's just like so fun, but like gave Hating Game vibes. So if you like that, you're gonna like this. This one, like I said, it is a coworker romance. He fell first. It has a fake dating as well. Basically in here, the heroine is trying to get a promotion at work. She's also trying to kind of avoid or make sure her ex knows that she has moved on because he's an investor of the company that she works at. So she kind of sees him every now and then. And so basically the hero ends up saving the heroine one day when like this potential client is kind of like harassing her. So he steps in and is like, yeah, that's not okay because I'm actually her boyfriend. And so it kind of goes from there because she's like, ooh, this could actually help me kind of long term for a little bit. And so they decide to kind of play into it, which the hero is not upset about because like I said, he's been pining for her since the moment he met her years ago. And so it kind of goes from there. This one does deal with a lot of stuff of like a woman working in the tech world. And so it has a lot of that kind of like political stuff and patriarchy BS and kind of all of that happening, which you'll be frustrated with throughout the story. So just know that this one does deal with like sexual harassment in a workplace as well. So yeah, for the most part, I liked this one. I liked the characters. I liked the romance. There was just something missing that I didn't like fall in love with them or their romance, if that makes sense. There was also some things at the end of the story that kind of just dragged, and then some of the things that tie up like her kind of work stuff and the harassment situation didn't like tie up as neatly and as I hoped it would. So there was that as well. Solid 3.5 stars. It's out June 18th. So yeah, check it out. Like I said, if you like The Hating Game, you will definitely like this one. All right. And then next I decided to end the month and just jump into some Ruby Dixon books because a bunch of hers came out on audio recently. So I was like, let's get back into my Ruby Dixon game. So I finally finished up the Ice Home series with Flora's Fiasco, which I think is book 16, 17 in the series. It's something like that. I have been holding out on finishing the series mostly because I didn't want it to end. And so I've been waiting for, I don't know, years now to finish it. And so also for the audio to come out. So the audio just came out recently. So I finally got to it, gave it 4 stars. So good. Love the setup. So basically in here, this is on the Not Hoth, the ice planet. And so in this one, we follow the hero and the heroine, where the heroine is human and the hero is an alien. And so in here, we have a setup where the hero and the heroine are kind of both paired up or maybe like assigned to other people. And they're just waiting for like resonance to happen to like fully set in, which is basically like how Fated Mates works on this planet. And so they're just kind of waiting, biding their time. He's kind of like promised to somebody. He's been like having this like pen pal relationship with her. And the hero and the heroine are just kind of like friends, but then they actually end up resonating together. And so it kind of sets off this like whole thing because they both have like other people they're kind of promised to. And so it becomes very like angsty. And the heroine is like, oh, the hero only wants me now because we're, you know, resonated, we're mates. And so it goes from there. So good. Maybe a little bit long in the middle for me, but then it set up the next spin-off series so well. So I did enjoy that. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. Like I said, it sets up the next series, which is the Ice Planet Clones, which I just love that we're having all these spin-offs exist in the same series, same world, because you get to see all these familiar characters that you love from like Ice Planet Barbarians as well as Ice Home now. So I've already continued on to the Ice Planet Clones series. I read that one when it came out. So I just loved seeing the setup, finishing Ice Home. So yeah, 4 stars. So then I decided to jump back into the Rizdiverse series, which I have been binging as the audios come out as well. So I got to When She's Merry, which is a novella, holiday novella part of the series. The audiobook recently came out. These are all on Libby and Hoopla, the audios, so definitely check there. This one I had a good time with and I gave it 4 stars. And this one, like I said, it's a novella, so it's super quick. It is set around kind of Christmas, where it's basically snowing on this farming planet, which is Rizda 3, where this whole series takes place. And so the heroine, she's a human on the planet, and she is feeling bad for her neighbor, who is like this older woman who is kind of feeling depressed and going through all of that. And so the heroine decides, I want to cheer her up. It's about to snow on the planet. Let me go get her Christmas tree, bring all this like Christmas cheer. And so she goes to the hero for help because he's like one of the custodians, one of the aliens who lives on the planet. And so she goes to him for help. He's kind of more grumpy and gruff. So she wants his help getting this Christmas tree. She tells him what she's doing. He ends up meeting her like neighbor, and he actually hits it off with the neighbor because he's like, oh my God, she like reminds me of my grandma. And so they hit it off. It's just super cute and fun, like fun little like holiday novella in space. 4 stars. Then I got to 2 more books in the Rizdiverse series. So I first jumped into When She Purrs. I gave this one 4 stars as well. This one is a marriage of convenience romance between a human heroine and a gladiator or former gladiator alien hero. So this one was a really fun setup. So basically in here, the heroine, she is 36. She feels like she is too old to like pull in a husband or a mate. She has like farming land, but her land is like not great. Nothing grows on it besides this like one aphrodisiac flower plant. And so she's also feeling like she's being harassed by her grumpy, kind of grouchy alien neighbor. And so she ends up going to a bounty hunter where she's basically like, okay, I need your help. I don't want you to like kill anybody, but I want you to find me a husband in name only, because I want somebody to like look after my land with me and take care of me, and just like for safety reasons, because like my neighbor is harassing me. And so then we meet the hero, who is actually the neighbor who she thinks is harassing her, but secretly he's actually trying to like woo and court her because he doesn't know. And so he's an alien and he's been like killing animals or critters and like leaving them on her doorstep, kind of like marking her area. And so just kind of doing all these things where he thinks in his mind he's courting and wooing her to like win her, but she doesn't see it that way. So he sees her talking to the bounty hunter and he goes over and is like, hey, what was that conversation about? The bounty hunter tells him like she's, you know, wanting me to find her a husband. And so he's like, ooh, you can abduct me tonight, drop me off at her place, I will be her husband. And so it kind of goes from there. So she has him show up and she's like, oh my God, you're the one I'm trying to avoid. Like, what's going on? They start to talk and then she realizes what he's been doing all along. He's a former gladiator who is just into her. Back on Earth, I think she was like a preschool teacher or something, and now she like writes romance books and releases like chapter by chapter on this online forum for other women in this like space world, which I thought was super fun. So this one was just super cute and fun. I like their like marriage of convenience and her realizing that she's into him. I like that both the characters are older as well, because like I said, she's 36. I think he's in his 40s. It's just fun to read about them. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. I think my only issue was that it was a little too long, because most of the books in this series are novellas. So yeah, it was a little longer than I wanted it to be, but yeah, 4 stars. All right, and then I jumped into When She Belongs, which like I said is another part of the Rizdiverse series by Ruby Dixon. This one I gave 4 stars to as well. This one, same thing. I wish it was a little shorter, because both of these 2 books are longer than some of the other books in the series. So I wish if they were like maybe novellas, a little bit shorter, I probably would have loved them even more. So this one is Forced Proximity. It has a grumpy, broody alien hero. This one in here, the hero has a mechanical arm. He has a lot of scars. He has PTSD from war. He wakes up from from nightmares. The heroine as well has some emotional trauma and abuse from her past, where basically she was kept as a human slave for 9 years. And so this romance is definitely a more slow burn, where basically she's been working on this alien ship and she ends up at these kind of station where the hero is. So it's like this isolated vibe where she's supposed to stay with him for a little bit. They kind of work together. He's very grumpy and broody. So at first they kind of like butt heads, and then she ends up getting injured or sick. And so he has to like take care of her. And so it kind of goes from there with them having to share a bed. She realizes he wakes up from nightmares, and it kind of goes from there. I just really enjoyed this one. Love their connection. Love the slow burn. Love how much the hero takes his time with her because he knows about her past. Just so good. Really enjoyed this one. 4 stars. All right, so those are the 35 books that I read for May. Definitely let me know in the comments if you've read any of these. If you had any favorite books of May, I would love to know, because like I said, I'm always looking to add to my TBR. If you want to leave me an emoji in the comments instead today, let me know that you watched this video. Leave me a purple heart, since I am wearing purple. My nail polish is purple. I'm just like in a very purple mood, so leave me a purple heart. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.